to myself because I'm all ready to go. And I suddenly realized I don't have my earbuds in, which means that, oh, you might be able to hear me, but the sound probably wouldn't be so good. So I've just popped them in and we're all good to go. Welcome to Leadershipisation. I'm Beth Berghan. I'm an internationally awarded leadership and communication coach, and I recently became a #1 best-selling author, which is fabulous. I'm really excited about being able to promote that and being able to talk a whole lot more about that. I'm here most every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time to talk about all things leadership. Last week, what we talked about was giving praise and compliments. And the largest focus of the 15, 20 minutes that we spent together last week was about giving compliments. But I finished off with something really important. And that was a little reminder to people that you need to get really good at accepting compliments as well. So not batting them away and not saying, oh, no, it was nothing. But actually simply saying thank you and then stepping back. Nothing else. No excuses, no justification. So I hope that you've had a terrific week being able to accept compliments really well. So this week, thinking about the common kinds of challenges that my clients have, my coaching clients have, I'm wanting to talk about or just share with you some things about motivating your team as a leader, motivating your team to participate, particularly into team meetings. Now, it can be a real challenge because what happens is that you kind of get a low level participation. It can be a challenge because there's not enough engagement that's going on. There's not enough curiosity being shown, and people are doing things really solo in the team rather than collaborating together. And so traditionally, if I was giving you some advice about getting your team to participate higher, it would be all about let's clarify some expectations, make sure they're really clear, and then put down a clear agenda for what's going to happen in the meeting, and then make sure as the leader or the facilitator of the meeting that what you're actually doing is asking open-ended questions. Now, the challenge with this traditional methodology of increasing participation is this. It simply doesn't always work. It simply doesn't always work. So let's kind of have a look at understanding this. Now, if you were to do some research into how people feel about team meetings, I reckon that your responses would come out something like this. Probably about 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 would talk about how they daydream the whole way through a meeting. They're not actually paying attention. Probably 50 to maybe even 60% would talk about how they felt that the meeting was unproductive. Why are we even here? Why do we need to have a meeting about this? 25% would talk about, maybe even 30%, perhaps a little higher, would talk about how that was irrelevant to me. Why did I need to be here? And I think probably pretty close to 3/4 or 75%, if you're the leader or facilitator, have you had training on how to run a really good meeting? Probably not. Probably not. So that's a little bit of a recipe for disaster, yeah? So why do we want our team to participate in regular team meetings? Well, we want them to participate because when they don't, we get reduced collaboration between the members of the team. that reduce collaboration. They're not sure where others are up to, so they don't bother to engage with them. We don't get to hear and share in everyone's different perspective, because we're kind of only hearing the perspective of those people who are participating. There's less cohesion as a team, and there can be a lot of wasted time, because maybe someone in that meeting is going to have to then go and talk through whatever the issue is again with someone else in that meeting. Yeah? Outside of the meeting. So exactly what do we do then if the traditional methodology of clear expectations, clear agenda, and open-ended questions isn't working? What is it that we need to be doing? Well, it's a little complex at times, but where we need to start is by actively considering the personal dynamics and the group or the team dynamics. So it's all about, first of all, you starting to get to know your team individually. What are their strengths and weaknesses? What are they afraid of? What do they love to do? What is it that their aspirations are? And how do they feel about the way the team meetings are currently going? You know, maybe someone's introverted and they feel really a really strong lack of confidence in participating in the meeting. Maybe they feel as though they're not valued or they're not relevant. Maybe they're suffering from imposter syndrome. Maybe they've tried being heard before and the message simply didn't get through. What's really important for them is that perhaps they haven't felt psychologically safe, like they can say whatever they need to say or whatever they want to say without feeling judged or belittled or put down in some way. So in situations like that, here is my recommendation to you. It would really be about holding a number of one-on-one meetings with your team, particularly if you're new in the leadership role. Hold those one-on-one meetings and make sure that you are asking plenty of open-ended questions into that situation. Start with those people that you have observed are most disengaged, and talk to them about how you value their contribution, what you've noticed that they're doing in the team, and ask them lots of open questions about, what are the things that they aspire to, what are the things they enjoy doing, and importantly, how do they feel about the team meetings. Now, remember, with your open-ended questions, how questions, what questions, when questions, not necessarily why questions. Now, I've talked about why questions before, but just as a quick reminder, if what happens is that you are asking lots of why questions, there's a chance that your team are going to get a little defensive because you're asking why all the time. So a great question is to ask, how can I support you so that you feel really comfortable about sharing your thoughts, your perspective in the meeting, because your perspective is really valuable. Yeah. It's also a good idea in that circumstance to think about allocating a specific topic to them. So talking to them about how what you would like them to do is to talk about a specific topic the next time that you have a team meeting. So pre-frame it for them, or, use an agreement frame and get them to actually acknowledge that, yeah, okay, I will talk about that, and assure them that you will make sure that they are as comfortable as anything to share. Now, that gives them some time to prep, and you've gained their approval, so away you go. Okay? Obviously, if they change their mind and they don't feel up to it at the last minute, you're going to support them through that. Are you going to force them to do it? No, not necessarily. However, you're going to encourage them to give it a best shot, because remember, getting started is, hey, that's awesome. That's what you want to have happen. So what about with a group? Now, in a group, there's all sorts of things that start to come to play. It's really awesome to have a diverse group of people in your team, but takes a different kind of management, because there may well be different languages, different cultural backgrounds, different genders, different sexual orientations. Someone might be neurodiverse. There are all those things that you need to take into account. The first thing is to show people that they are valued and that they are safe. That they are valued and that they are safe. And it's all about working on that team culture to really build that psychological safety. So how do we do this? How do we do this? I'm going to give you a very basic, 2 or 3 points to start with. And then, as you'll hear me say shortly, that whole topic of psychological safety is one that I'll save for a discussion like this in coming weeks. The first thing is that you want to be clear and you want to have identified the desired team behaviour. How are you going to support each other? How are you going to communicate with each other? What the standards are there? How transparent and open you're going to be with each other? And once you've identified these, what's really important is that you actively are modelling those behaviours. That's what's really important, that you are modelling those behaviours all the time. Now, as well as you modelling them, you need to consolidate people's learning by recognising and acknowledging the behaviours that are the desired team behaviours when you see other team members sharing those behaviours between them. So if you see some really good collaboration, point it out. If you see someone lifting up and supporting another person in your team, point it out and acknowledge it. And then also in the team situation, what it's important for you to do is to actually encourage participation. Now, sometimes what that means is actually allowing all of the normal louder voices to be speaking, but then focusing your attention on the person who isn't speaking, looking at them and asking them to participate. Now, this isn't about saying, we haven't heard from you for ages, Beth. Instead, it's about saying something like this. I'm really curious. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about that, Beth. Well, I'm curious. You've been working on this project. I'm interested to hear what you've noticed as we've been going through. And, use the person's name, but it's not about pressuring them. It's talking about the fact that you're curious to hear what their thoughts are about the topic, because the topic relates to a project they've been working on, or a point of view that they will have something to contribute about. Yeah. The really big thing here is that psychological safety is key. And you can see just with the example that I just gave you, there's a whole heap of difference between saying, I'm really curious, I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are about that, then if what I'm doing is saying, we haven't heard from you for ages, right? One is inviting participation The other is almost pushing someone by saying, it's time for you to speak up. Why don't we ever hear from you? And as a leader, that's not necessarily going to create that psychological safety in your team. And as I said earlier, that's really the key. So it's a great big topic, that psychological safety. So that's the one that I'll cover in coming weeks. So look out for that. But in the meantime, start thinking about how you can get to know your team as individuals and as a group of people so that you can bring out the best in them. You can encourage their participation because that diversity of perspectives brings a massive, massive insight into the team at times. I'm reminded, it's kind of like I remember working with a group of people, a group of high-level execs, and they were talking about wanting to make some changes to the processes that were being used at one of the lowest levels in the organization that they worked for. And it wasn't until we kind of, through our brainstorming, identified that the experts about doing that process were the people who were doing it. And that from lofty heights, we might be able to see, I reckon there's better ways of doing this. However, if we came up with those better ways of doing it from our lofty heights without consulting to the people who know the system best, we were missing an opportunity for absolute learnings. We were missing a massive, massive opportunity. And so once the team I was working with understood that, they set a process into place where they ran little focus groups and they were consulting with the people who were doing it, and were astounded when they came back so that we could move on to the next part of the project that I was doing with them around, where is the company going, leadership and communication and building their leadership intelligence. What was fascinating was that they hadn't thought of it. However, the best ideas by far came from the people who were actually on the ground doing it. So recognize that there's a real value in asking your team to participate and building a culture where people do want to participate. When you're a new leader, of course, it's going to be a bit of a challenge to you to begin with, but I've shared with you that strategy of get to know people, have those one-on-ones with them, starting with those people that you've observed are the least engaged. So if they're least engaged, they're more disengaged. Okay, that's it for this week. If you are watching a replay, I'd love it if you put #replay. If you've got any questions or comments, please pop them down. Happy to respond to those. If there's anything further you'd like to ask me, please reach out. In the meantime, have a glorious rest of the day. It's actually a beautiful day here in Queensland. It started off a little bit, well, it's quite cold actually, but the sun is out now and it's shining really strongly. So yeah, here comes autumn. We're nearly into winter. Okay, enjoy the rest of your week. See you next week.